Now let's talk about the scenes and the same issues we spoke of the last time in relation to character comparisons. The comparisons are again lazy and lacks proper context. For example, you have the comparisons that shows group shots of characters and their argument is, it's a group shot. Haven't seen that one done before. While others, their argument is, this scene is a copy because the characters walk the same point of view. Again, a very weak argument. While some sites circulate the same in-shot pictures you see here, other sites, mainly YouTube, are more egregious for using examples from the movies that came after The Lion King. And I'm sitting here asking, what do they want to achieve by doing this? If they want to prove The Lion King plagiarized scene from Jungle Emperor, then stick to the versions that came before the movie. Unless you want to prove that Jungle Emperor ripped out The Lion King, but I doubt that's the original intent. If you're using examples from what came after The Lion King, not only does this make you look like an idiot when someone points it out for you, but this also makes you look like a liar for presenting fake evidence to win an argument and hope the one receiving it is ignorant enough to not know the truth. And for those who use all versions as evidence, this makes me ask if they seriously believe these all came from the same series, which is not possible because you need to be blind to not notice the vast difference in animation quality or character designs between them all. You can't seriously think this character from 1965 is the same one we see from 2000. That's not how this works. And of course, they don't explain anything, because if they needed to explain what they're exhibiting, they need to be truthful about it. And that's not happening if they're lying about their evidence, or ignorant on what they're talking about, or just want to prove Disney is evil. Reminding you once again, the importance of research and honesty in your presentation if you want to present unprejudiced, not one-sided facts, because doing otherwise would be unethical and just plain wrong. And if you don't understand what you're working on, then don't even bother doing it because it only makes things worse. It makes it worse for presenting a faulty idea of your subject, and it makes it worse for giving a bad impression on you. And you know how I feel on those who would do anything for clicks without understanding what they're presenting. And don't use the excuse of, they didn't know these versions existed, okay? This doesn't work now as how it was 25 years ago. We have the internet. We have search engines. We have anime databases. We have streaming sites. We have online shops. If someone needed to check what's available of the franchise, they can do it in less than a minute. This is not rocket science. The anime and manga are not obscure titles only a handful of people know about. They are available to purchase worldwide in multiple languages. Sure, you have the language barrier in some cases, but you can still have assistance if you want the translation of a specific part, or you could just learn the language itself. What I'm trying to say here is people are not morons. They can tell if something is wrong if they dug deeper into this and discover the truth if they wanted to. But I guess I should start with the main topic anyway. So how are we gonna handle this? First, I want to bring attention to an interview of Fred Ladd. In case you forgot who he is, please check part 1, the history. This interview by Harvey Deneroff is sourced to a magazine titled Anime World Network in an article dating back to 1996. When discussing The Lion King and it plagiarizing Jungle Emperor, Fred Ladd noted that he found 5 or 6 similarities between the two. Across the web, 6 examples are circulated around, which I'd assume are the ones pointed out by Fred Ladd. And these are the examples we're going to examine here. We will go over each one of them one by one. We'll point out the source of the comparison used, including the episode number and title, play the entire scene in question, and then present the explanation and full context behind them. So let's start with this one. We have 2 lions on top of a cliff. In The Lion King, this is from the beginning of the movie during the Circle of Life song. The image from Jungle Emperor comes not from an episode, but from the opening song. Okay, first thing I want to point here that this shot is only available in the Japanese version. This segment is completely absent from the American release, which is an odd choice here since the regular episode has other similar shots, but they went with the Japanese opening of all things. So what's the context here? It's just an opening title sequence with the hero standing on a cliff, because it's cool. This is not an invention of either of the franchises. The hero standing on a cliff is one of the most classic images seen and has been done and replicated over the years. The modern equivalent would be the image of a superhero standing on top of the building. It's not exclusive to anyone. In The Lion King, Mufasa stands on the cliff of Pride Rock. Pride Rock is the equivalent of a king's castle, and him standing there is like a royal family standing in their castle's balcony when they see their subjects. In Jungle Emperor, Panja is standing on a regular cliff. It's not his home in the same sense as Pride Rock. And here's something to note. Despite the series called Jungle Emperor, a vast majority of the events takes place outside the jungle. Most of the events takes place in rocky mountains, deep valleys, the desert, the savannah, and they have lots of cliffs where characters can stand up high or kick someone down. And a regular scene to end these episodes, you have Leo and his animal friends standing on top of the cliffs looking heroic. Lions do this in real life, by the way. They go to the highest point in their territory and sit there so they can get a good look at their area of dominance and get an eye on prey or intruders. Next, we have the stampede scene. In The Lion King, this is in the middle bit after Be Prepared. The image from Jungle Emperor comes from episode 39, Running Wild.
Kimba, this ride's on me.
Thanks, Boss Rhino. This is swell. Ha Bucky!
Bully! I can't hang on any longer!
Hang on, I'll save you. Here comes Kimba.
Good!
I'm gonna need all the help I can get to bring Bucky out of this mess. Let's go, Boss Rhino. Time for action. Charge! What is it?
I got news!
And we've got trouble. Look over there. We've got to help Bucky and Polly.
That's right. We don't have time to sit around and talk.
Stop gabbing and look! Those three are foaming at the mouth. That's not normal. What does it mean?
That must mean they're wild. We've got to keep them from stampeding.
Hang on, Bucky. Keep your courage up.
What do? We got to save Bucky without causing a stampede. Maybe he could wait until they pass. That's impossible. He never last. Huh? What's this? Oh, it's the moles. Of course. That gives me a great idea.
Thanks, but we weren't successful.
So what's the context here? In this episode, there's a large herd of antelopes, as in thousands, if not millions of antelopes marching across Africa as if they were tranced, and they've reached Leo's territory. Naturally, Tommy was okay with this, thinking they're his relatives and they won't do any harm to the farms. Except they ruined everything, sending Tommy in a fit of rage and going against all of them by himself, and fails at it. Following this humiliating display, the animals in the jungle agrees to let Tommy handle this situation by himself with no one taking his side or volunteering to help him. And so, the next time we see him, he is stuck in the middle of the stampede clinging to a tree. Leo and his friends do help later on after knowing the full story of these antelopes, especially the part that said all of them will drown in the lake if nothing stops them, and they save Tommy by moving the tree with the help of the moles. To solve the antelope crisis, a wall was built to block their path, but sadly it didn't last long and couldn't stop them all. So a lot of them ended up drowning in the lake, in addition to other casualties during the runaway. Another wall was made, and this time it caused panic among the antelopes, and that caused them to change course away from the lake. The episode then ends with the remaining antelopes helping Tommy in fixing the damage they caused to the farms. In The Lion King, the wildebeest stampede was a trap set by Scar with the assistance of the hyena trio to kill Simba and Mufasa, or at the very least one of them. In Jungle Emperor, the plan was to stop the stampede and fix the damage they did to the farms. So one was about running from the stampede, the other was confronting it. Also, the situation plays differently between the two. The Lion King plays it dramatically and serious in tone, and one character ended up dead. And Jungle Emperor, being a light-hearted children's cartoon, played it more comedic with slapstick humor with nobody dying. That until they get to the part where they need to save the antelopes, and it switches to a surprisingly dark tone, where they acknowledge the death of the antelopes without sugarcoating it in the dub. Both the narrator and characters say there were casualties. Survival rate was not 100% here.
Without warning, a part of the mountain gives way and crashes down. Panic seizes the antelopes, and the stampede is on as they really start running wild.
If only they hadn't started running wild, we might have been able to save them all.
But, Kimba, you have to look at it this way. If it hadn't been for you, all of them would have been lost. As it is, there's just a few. Just a very few.
Next we have the thornbush scene. In The Lion King, this comes after the stampede scene. The image from Jungle Emperor comes from episode 2, The Wind in the Desert.
Get me out of here!
Kimba, son of Caesar!
Yes, but who are you?
I am Claw. I am the king of the jungle.
You're a tyrant, Claw, and you're not noble enough to be a king.
You call me the king who'll be sorry.
No, I won't. My friend taught me that it's right to fight against injustice.
All right, fight.
I know. I'll lead Claw to the desert and trick him.
So what's the context here? This episode marks the return of Leo to Africa and meeting his animal friends. In the middle of the episode, he was captured by hunters, but one of them sets him free and dies during the trip. In his trip back home, he saves Dodie, a recurring character in the series, from Dick and Bo, and he meets Boo Boo, and they fight in an area surrounded by spiky bushes. And during the fight, Boo Boo throws Leo and falls on the thorns in a comedic fashion. In The Lion King, the spiky bushes shows up during Simba's escape from the hyenas, who were sent to kill him under Scar's orders. Simba tumbles and loses control over himself and falls in the middle of the thorns, but his small size let him go through them without injuring himself. Too bad for Banzai, his siblings launched him to the thorns and injures himself and crawls out all prickly. So yeah, both of these are comedic injury moments for both Leo and Banzai, but the circumstances weren't 100% copy of each other. In Jungle Emperor's case, Leo's injury barely affects anything and the fight goes on like it never happened. While in The Lion King, seeing how the hyena's path is blocked by the thorns, they drop the task and assume the desert will kill Simba for them, thus affecting how the rest of the movie plays out, and then comes to bite them when Simba's return. While Leo had different homes throughout the franchise, ranging from caves to plane wreck and eventually building his own castle, his house in the 65 series was the Thorny Bushes. May not be the most regal looking house for a king, but it serves its purpose as protection for him and a small-sized friend against intruders. Leo's house is normally placed within the jungle where everyone can find, but in episode 35, we discover another house that is placed on top of a cliff away from the jungle where he hid and rested after sustaining heavy injuries in the previous episode, making it like an emergency sanctuary for him. Next we have the eating scene. In The Lion King, this comes during the Hakuna Matata segment. The image from Jungle Emperor comes from episode 8, The Insect Invasion.
Kimba's plans for the animals' farm have hit a snag. Patiently, the animals have waited for the crops to grow, but the only thing that's ready to eat is skunk grass.
You mean you don't care for skunk grass? I eat it all the time. It's good. It's just that you never tried it before. Come on, dig in. You'll like it.
Please, Bucky, don't rush us. We promised we'd try it, but we have to get used to the smell.
It's not so bad as all that. Besides, if you meat-eating animals are now going to eat vegetables, you gotta get used to lots of new tastes.
It's your turn now, Leopard, so go ahead.
You don't have to smell it, just gulp it down.
I will if they will.
All together.
Well, now that you've tried it, how do you like it?
It's all right.
Didn't I tell you? Go ahead, eat your fill.
Of course, Bucky.
Eat hearty, Linda Link. All right. Go ahead. It's delicious. Gee, it seemed like a good idea for all the animals to eat vegetables, but now I'm not so sure.
So what's the context here? Tommy invites some of his carnivore friends, Charlie, Harley, and Dinky, along with Leo to try some of the grass they harvested from their farms. Skunk grass, to be exact, since it's the only thing they have for now. Leo wants the carnivores in his jungle to eat vegetables so no one will be forced to hunt or kill other animals. But since they're, well, carnivores, as in meat eaters, they can't just eat that stuff. And with a title such as The Insect Invasion, you know where this is going. The jungle is under a huge locust invasion. Or at least what I assume are meant to be locusts. They don't specify which insects are they. And no, the carnivores don't join because it's not their problem as far as they're concerned, and instead they try to eat Tommy. But they discover the locusts taste good and they come up with a plan of catching them all and store them for food. They make huge nets out of animal hair, because of course they can. But the invasion is still massive, not even the nets can stop them. So they trap them in the caves where they can't leave, and those who escaped were eaten by other animals. Now the dumb writing is a bit confusing here. I had to listen to the dialogue a couple of times to understand what they're getting at. We see Charlie here licking his mouth after eating some locusts, liking their taste, but his dialogue instead is about saving the crops.
Got away, so I'll have to wait for the farm crop. Huh? I better get the others to help or there won't be a crop.
Then, when they talk about storing the insects for food, they specifically say it's for the birds because they're too small for them.
There's no question about it. We'll simply fight them off.
But they're so small, and there's so very many.
If they were bigger, we could eat them all up.
Too bad we're not birds and we could have a real feast.
If we had a place to store them, they'd last the birds a whole year.
And by the end, they're happy to eat the vegetables they harvested, ignoring the locusts they caught, and never mentioned using them as food source for them.
I never thought I'd see the day when I'd be so happy to be harvesting a crop of vegetables.
What's more, I never thought I'd enjoy eating them.
I always say anything really worthwhile is worth working for.
We not only worked, we fought for this.
But enough of this philosophizing. Let's have a picnic.
What a brilliant idea, Bucky, old friend!
So, the implication here is the carnivores, Charlie, Holly, and Dinky, turn to vegetarians at this point. Hold on. Vegetarian felines? Why does this sound familiar?
I'm a vegetarian.
Nope! We're not talking about this one! Anyway, this is not the only insect invasion the series gets, cause in episode 23, the gigantic grasshopper, and yes, it's the one with the giant radioactive grasshopper. In this episode, a series of tremors were going on, but not everyone could feel it. Mandy discovers giant flowers in the mountain, and Kenichi speculates that it's caused by radiation. The radiation is thought to be from a mysterious saucer-like thing that crashed in the jungle in the past. Leo and his friends inspect the mountains once again, and I'd assume the insects captured earlier, now referred to as grasshoppers, have escaped from captivity because the caves became too small for them. Now, unlike last time, the carnivores this time do go and eat them. But it was a bit too much for them, and they all ended up being too fat to move. And then you have the giant radioactive grasshopper, and no one can eat it because, as I just said, all the carnivores got so fat they can't eat more to save their lives. The giant grasshopper is later killed when they drag it to a volcano. The episode ends with the moles uncovering grasshopper eggs with the idea of using them as another alternate food supply for the meat eaters. Good thing they don't have radiation poisoning in this world, otherwise everybody would be dead after contacting with it. In The Lion King, the insect eating scene was done more like a test of character or rite of passage for Simba. If he wanted to live in Timon and Pumbaa's home, he needs to live by the same standards they live by, which includes eating insects instead of red meat. If he can't do it, then he won't survive. The grass-eating scene in Jungle Emperor wasn't a test of character, it was just Tommy asking his friends to try a new food for them and no personal stakes were present. Leo, and for an extent the other carnivores' diet, has been a mystery in this franchise. One thing for sure, they don't hunt other animals for food, but they still need meat to survive. And no, it's not how Madagascar did by replacing meat with fish. In the manga, we see the animals eat meat, even Leo gives some to Boo Boo and later to Leia, which means he's not above eating meat and didn't use any substitutes to survive. When the diner first opened, some animals did bring meat to share, but they didn't specify its source. Maybe it's supposed to be leftovers from other meat eaters, or animals died naturally, but we're not exactly sure. In the 65 anime, we don't know how they lived, except for Boo Boo and other carnivores who are okay with hunting other animals. None of the other carnivores were shown to hunt other animals within Leo's jungle. Even Leo up till episode 8 wasn't shown what he eats, but one thing for sure, even he can have his limits as seen by this little nightmare fuel moment.
It was only a dream.
Since they had the insects stored for a vast duration of episodes until the grasshopper episode, then we can assume the insects is their alternate substitute for meat in addition to eating vegetables. Kind of like the Outlanders surviving mostly on termites. But then comes episode 26, a revolting development, where the animals are introduced to a new artificial meat, or Albert meat as shown here. The meat substitute uses a flower from a planet called Tickle Chickle Tree, and is made by Professor Calvin Hottage?
Calvin Hottage.
Harnage?
Professor Hottage.
We'll call him Albert. Anyway, with this invention, the meat eaters of Leo's jungle can finally have meat to eat without killing other animals. And with this meat around, they no longer need the insects and they set them all free. Wait, they set the grasshoppers that destroyed their farms free?
You idiot!
In the 89 series, there was no artificial meat, and the animals are more open on killing each other if they're outside Panja's jungle. Leo's diet is still unknown, but he still goes through what looks like meat withdrawal. And once again, nothing's shown to indicate what he eats. Maybe he was eating preserved food found in the plane wreck he used to live in, but we weren't shown that, and so we go by what we see here. In episode 19, we see him eating some grass, but that's out of desperation since he is lost in the desert. He was too hungry and nothing around to eat, so he eats what he could find. Which is accurate to real life. Some carnivores will eat plants when they're too hungry and can't find meat to eat. And using Simba's pride again, we see some Outlanders eating tree branches. Or they could be just chewing them. In the Jungle Emperor wiki, they say the series ends with Leo hunting for prey, but that's false and never happened in the finale or any other episode. Next we have the grasping for life with the villain above scene. In The Lion King, two examples were used here. The first is with Mufasa, and the other with Simba. The images from Jungle Emperor comes from episode 12, The Hunting Ground.
Please be careful, Kimba.
Why?
I remember seeing some hunters' traps around this area. I wouldn't want you to get caught.
All right, I'll watch out. Bella, help me!
I am not your Aunt Bella.
Then you lied to me.
That's right. My plan has worked. Help me, Kimba!
I'll help, but you must tell me the truth.
I will, Kimba, I will.
All right, grab hold. All right, now tell me, who's behind all this? And did you really see Turkle?
Turkle is down there.
Where? Down there?
Yeah.
I can't see him.
You have to look real hard. The famous Kimba. Huh.
So what's the context here? First, it should be noted that this episode is a loose adaptation of Chapter 8 of the manga. The character we see here is Belladonna, or Silver in the Japanese version. She's a lioness owned by Mary, who is now amnesiac and doesn't remember her past life. In the manga, she is a chief huntress in a tribe, a concept reused for the 89 series, but instead of a white girl, she is now a warrior native. But in the 65 anime, she's a regular game hunter instead who goes by the name Tonga. Mary, now as Tonga, sends Belladonna to bait Leo to come to her. She goes under the guise of his long-lost aunt from his mother's side, and she asks him to join her to get a remembrance of his mother from her cave. But it was a trap, and she was just pretending to be his aunt. The way the trap went differs between the mediums. In the manga, Belladonna falls into the spiked pit on purpose, knowing Leo will save her, and then she pushes him after dropping his guard, revealing she was lying to him, and he was saved by clinging to a rock he was grasping before he fell. In the anime, she leads him to the trap first, and was going to bite his paws to let go of the edge, but she slips and now the tables have turned. Of course, knowing Leo wouldn't let her fall to her death, he saves her in exchange for information about a missing animal Mandy asked him to look for. And since the writers wanted him to be an idiot for this moment, he falls for her trap again. And just like in the manga, he was saved by a conveniently placed rock under him. Leo later finds himself in a cage and discovers Belladonna was working for the humans all along out of fear of abuse. In the manga, this was the turning point of Leo that we mentioned a couple of times already, and made his escape afterwards. Mary's tribesmen followers were afraid to follow him because he was heading in the direction of Moon Mountain, which was a sacred mountain for them and didn't dare approach it. And it's there where Leo meets the Great Mother, an ancient woolly mammoth who brings snow and ice wherever she goes to, and became one of the most recurring characters in the franchise and helped Leo in many occasions. In the anime, Leo finds the missing tortoise he was looking for in the same cage he was in. He releases him to warn the animals about Mary's upcoming hunting party. Belladonna later tricks Leo by letting him out of the cage to get shot by one of the hunters, but Kenichi stops him in time. The two felines fight for a bit, and Leo locks Belladonna in the same cage he was locked in earlier. They of course free her later out of sympathy, but she is still planning to backstab them later. Man, is she giving Loki a run of his money with the amount of backstabbing she had done this one episode. She later finds Mary and she guides her to where Leo, Kenichi and the Tortoise are, but there's a communication problem and Mary mistook it for an attempt to push her off the cliff, so she pushes Bella off instead after giving her a good whipping. But it's here where Kenichi finally meets her after their separation and discovers her amnesic condition. Down the cliff, Belladonna finally accepts that she was wrong and asks for Leo's forgiveness for real this time. And she then rests like the dead, if you know what I mean.
You rest now.
All right, I will.
In the manga, she just disappears after doing her part. The rest of the episode goes on stopping the hunters before they reach the animals, but they were saved by the Great Mother just like how it went in the manga. In The Lion King, first we had Mufasa clinging for his life begging for his brother to save him from the stampede, and later, Simba hangs for his life at the tip of Pride Rock after backing down from Scar and the hyenas. Okay, so there are some similarities, the first being a character led to a trap, and the same character grasping for his life. The key difference here is the execution of the scenes. In The Lion King, since Mufasa wasn't killed by the stampede by itself, Scar had to do the job now or never and throw him down the valley. The other scene was a complete accident since Scar's plan was to corner Simba but not throwing him off the cliff until he remembered what he did and decided to use some ironic callback and be a bit of a smug by telling Simba before he throws him off. Belladonna's trap, on the other hand, was throwing Leo in the pits from the start, but contrived writing and plot armor saved him from the spikes. But the main comparison used here is the point of characters hanging for their lives with the villain watching over them. As stated in an earlier part, Jungle Emperor shows a lot of cliffs and mountain scenes, and a lot of them where battles take place or characters slipping and grasping for their lives.
Yaboo! That wasn't very nice!
So, doubt my word, will you?
I gotta teach him a lesson, but first I gotta get out of here! Alley-oop!
You won't trick me again?
I hope this swim will cool your temper a bit.
This action is not limited to one or two incidents. Also not limited to this franchise.
Fly, you fools!
While Belladonna wasn't Leo's aunt, he does have a relative in the franchise, the lioness Leona, the guardian of the shrine that houses the hides of Leo's ancestors. Her relationship with Leo is different depending on which version you're getting. In the manga, she is his cousin. In the 65 anime, she's his elder sister. And in the 89 anime, she's his aunt from his father's side. In the manga, she first appears in chapter 9 during Leo's trip back to his jungle, where he meets her protected by a tribe. In the 65 anime, she first appears in episode 19, The Mystery of the Deserted Village, where she lives in a deserted village that once housed Panja instead of being protected by people. And it's one of the few times Leia displays some character by showing some jealousy before she knows Leo and Leona's relationship.
Kimba!
Who is that making that noise? Go away!
Why, it's Kitty! Kitty! Stop it! I'm sorry, Kitty, but I can't let you fight with my sister. Huh? Sister?
Yes, Kitty. Kimba's my brother, though we never met until today.
This native village is where my father lived before he came to the jungle to be the king of the animals. These are the hides of my father's father and all my grandfathers who lived here before him.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm so ashamed that I picked a fight with you.
Oh, don't be. I'm happy that you're that fond of my brother.
All right, let's forget about it, girls.
And in the 89 series, she first appears in episode 10, and this time she's more like a goddess to Congo's tribe and a tourist attraction, with Leia being one of her servants. Unfortunately, the relationship between them here isn't the best. Leo doesn't like humans in this continuity, and he hates how his aunt is getting spoiled by them instead of acting like a wild lioness. Meanwhile, Leona prefers to stay with the humans because they also help her protect his ancestors and can't leave them for the jungle life. And since this continuity likes to be edgy, she was killed in episode 26 by Hammock, the same human who killed his father. Edgy. And finally, we have the Father in the Sky scene, with two versions of it. In The Lion King, this comes after the meeting between Simba and Rafiki. The first version we have is the one with the father directly talking to the son. The image from Jungle Emperor comes from episode 22, Dangerous Journey. I've shown the clip in the last video, but I'll show you again as a refresher.
Kimba, Pop Wooly grows weaker and weaker from the fever. Are you going to sit by and do nothing, son? Since I can no longer help the animals of the jungle, you must take over, Kimba.
Yes, Father, I will.
So what's the context here? In this episode, an epidemic strikes the jungle, making all animals sick from an endless cold, the Stony Mountain Speckled Fever. The epidemic was cured by an old mountain goat named Old Pop Wooly, who is the only one capable of climbing the steep mountain to get the cure. But soon he catches the epidemic, thus forcing Leo to climb the mountain on his own, which is not an easy task. Pop Wooly was capable of climbing the mountain thanks to his hooves and experience with the mountain, but Leo has neither, and that meant he can't reach the cure for him. Facing with this issue, Leo gets some sleep and he sees his father in his dream. This gives him the determination to go on his quest alone and climb the mountain by himself to save the old goat. The key difference between this scene and the one in The Lion King is one being a dream, the other was real. Simba is seeing and talking to the spirit of Mufasa, fully awake and aware of it, and Rafiki and Timon and Pumbaa and even Kion confirm that yes, it happened in front of them. It was neither a dream nor an illusion seen by Simba alone. Of course, this caused a debate among fans on whether magic was real or not in the Lion King world. And I say, yes, it's real. Rafiki is a shaman. He displays characteristics that are mostly associated with shamanism, which includes ceremonial practices, animal glyphs, and connecting with spirits. If magic wasn't real here, then how did he know Simba was alive by just looking at a handful of flower petals in what appears like fortune-telling? Or him and Mufasa having a shipping war in Simba's pride? Or having the old spirit assist Kion in the Lion Guard? Or better yet, Mufasa himself speaking to Kion? Because magic, that's how. Now to talk about the second version of this scene means that I have to reveal some serious spoilers. And I do mean serious spoilers. If you want to skip this part, then please jump ahead to this timestamp. If you think you're ready for it, then proceed at your own risk. Now then, I held back on explaining this panel for a good reason. When this image is brought up, they say this is Kimba's father, as in this is the scene the Lion King copied the idea from. But here's the thing. What you see here is not Panja's spirit. The lion cub you see down below is not Leo. That's his son Rune, standing next to Uncle Mustachio. The cloud that you're seeing represents Leo. And the reason we are having this scene? Because Leo died. Here's the rundown. In the story segment, we mentioned the subplot of the Moonlight Stone. We also mentioned how Leo volunteered to help the explorers to reach the mountain. While they did face many hardships, including the weather and other animals, including dinosaurs of all things, Leo was hiding a secret. He got snowblind. He was traveling with his human companions with his vision lost. and at the top of the accursed mountain, the weather was deadly. All explorers, minus Mustachio, got lost or died. With the chance of their survival being slim, Leo offers his uncle a request: to take the knife and kill him, and use his hide to keep himself warm and eat his flesh for food. Of course, Mustachio is never going to do this to someone he raised like his child and help them in their damned quest fueled by greed. And so, Leo does the unthinkable. He jumps to the knife and sacrifices himself, leaving his human companion with a dead body to do what he must to live. And that's the end of Leo, son of Panja, the king and emperor of Africa. He didn't die in a great battle for the throne. He didn't die in a war surrounded by an army of his animal followers. He didn't die of old age in his fancy castle surrounded by friends and family. He didn't die of humiliation in a zoo's cage. He didn't die by a poacher's bullet or a tribesman's spear. He died alone, on top of a mountain, away from everyone else. He sacrificed himself to save a friend. Not just any friend. A human. A creature that is not an animal like him. A creature that has always been an enemy of animal. A human who raised him as a father when no one else was available for the task. Leo spent his life building on the possible friendship between humans and animals, and his death is just another way to prove that is possible. And with the storm settling down, Mustachio was able to ascend to the lower levels, and he meets Rooney, who up until that point was lost and away from the jungle, stuck in the cruel world of man. The old man delivers the sad news to the child who didn't get to know his father much. And on their way to Leo's castle, they see the clouds, and the clouds turn to the shape of a lion. The legacy of Leo still lives on in his kingdom. Now, as you just heard, this is how the manga ended, with Leo's death. The cloud you see here is not Leo's spirit. It's just an artistic symbolism of Leo's legacy and nothing like talking to the spirits like in The Lion King. A similar example happens way early on in the series, specifically in the first episode, when Leo sees the face of his mother in the stars. But again, it's not the same as the Lion King example. A good comparison to this would be something like in The Land Before Time, when Littlefoot spots what looks like his mother, but turned out to be just the clouds in her shape. To us, the audience, we know it's just the clouds, but to Littlefoot, he saw his mother guiding him to the Great Valley because he's a kid, and that's what he wants to believe. Now, something that always bugged me about this comparison is they used the panel from the manga, a source that wasn't widely available as much as the anime. Yet, they went with this one instead of this shot, which comes from Leo the Lion episode 26, The Eternal Mount Moon. But unlike the manga, the anime ended with Rooney saving Leo and Mustachio. It was a happy ending and everybody lived. But the lion cloud is still present as a background object, but doesn't have the same effect as the manga version. Still doesn't answer why they didn't use this for the comparison. Did they really hate this series that much they didn't want to use anything from it for their case? It's weird. On this subject, I want to bring attention back to Fred Latt's interview mentioned at the beginning of this part. I bring him up because in the interview, he says the following: "There was a pan up to the sky. I said to my wife, don't tell me the father lion is going to appear in the clouds. And he did. I couldn't believe it." No disrespect to the mister, but I don't think he remembered things correctly. If he was referring to this moment, then yes, it matches the father lion appearing part. But he didn't appear in the clouds, he appeared on the moon. And if he was referring to this, I just showed you the story behind it and how far it was from father lion appearing in the clouds. Could be faulty memory, could be something else, but it doesn't match what he had in mind. And that's the end of this part. Of course, there are many examples people want to take a look at, and some are covered in other videos beyond these 6 examples, but I'm sticking with these ones as they're the most circulated examples, and most of the ones outside them are mostly silly 1-second comparisons making them very weak arguments and not worth the trouble. With that being said, we compared the stories, characters, and scenes. We compared using many versions and sequels. All what's left now is to give a conclusion on this matter. Come back next time when we conclude this mini-series as I give my answer to the main question of this controversy and my full thoughts on it.